Thank you very much. Nice. How lovely to be here. I hope you like Super Mario as much as I do. It's fun at least. So we're going to talk about security, and we have seen a lot of security this year. I was thinking I was the only one that's going to talk about it, but it seems it's been up all over the place. So I'm going to do a different kind of approach, because I'm going to do a little bit more on what's actually out there. So we've seen a lot about the new stuffs, but we all have a history, right? Yeah. So we will go into some reports, look into that. We will see some of the things that we have learned during the way. So I usually work with analyze and review daily, both with our service and both manually, depending on our customers. So we see a lot of things that's out there. I will not be able to tell you everything, but I will tell you, we'll go through some things, and I will also describe some scenarios where we are seeing strange things, or where we are, I don't know, maybe taking shortcuts rather would be the thing. So just to kick this off, I found a report from IBM actually. So this is from 2022, and it's 45 of all the breaches that's going on is happening in the cloud, which is quite a lot. And we all who worked with AIS is working in the cloud, which means that this is important for us to understand. And the second thing is that if you look into the numbers, the costs, that's actually is part of all this, they're quite huge. The best one is the one who's in a hybrid environment. And I guess that's because they have a lot of things on-prem as well, and maybe not always getting the leak out. So according to them, an average data breach costs in a public cloud is $5 million. It's quite a sufficient amount of money. So how are they doing this? I mean, we saw Nino. He would probably be able to attack most companies in many ways. He covered a few ways. If you look continuously in this report, you will see that there is a lot of ways. So social engineering, which is maybe the one we hear about, is one of the big ones. But the interesting part that I see is that there are two of them that is far to the right, because if you look at the right part, it's how often they are occurring. And then you have the one called cloud misconfiguration. Nasty one, right? And we also have the stolen or compromised credentials. So these two are the ones we're going to deep dive a little bit today, because these are the ones I will cover. But before this is me. You kind of heard me. I like Super Mario. I also like going to the box. So I'm a CrossFit nerd. I like that. I got 2 kids, and I live in Sweden. That's a short story. When it comes to all of this, I usually try to tell a story, like a journey or something. And we need to have a little bit of a mindset thing here. So we're going to start with that. And I'm going to provoke a little bit to kind of put up 2 of the things that, yeah, maybe not that important in many cases, but we'll use it for mindset thing. So if I talk HTTPS and TLS, and if I'm not correct, Martin, 2 years ago we started with HTTPS, right? So these things, when we work with Analyze, we see these being often kind of like, yeah, whatever. So how do you feel it? Do you have anyone who's like, HTTPS is really, really important? Wow. Oh, now. Oh yeah, there's some of you guys. Nice. So the thing about all of this is something I'm going to go into, but let's just switch to my favorite thing. I'm just going to say this. I actually have slides this year. You have seen me before. I usually don't. So all about this is, let's just say that we are building a service. We have a database. We have a service in here, like an API. Let's go ahead and have that. And then we have a consumer over here. So the data going back and forth between our database is something that we have control over, right? So this area is something we build. We want to build this secure. We use managed identities. We use HTTPS. We use I don't know, role-based access, ABAC, and whatever we want to use. We use everything, right? VNet maybe even. Cool. And then the consumer comes in, and we publish this as an API. The consumer comes in, he's going to start using our things, and we haven't enforced HTTPS. Is that smart? All that data going public cloud? Yeah. Okay. Counter argument. Clients are going to use HTTPS. Yeah? Well, they probably are because they want to have their traffic as well. But who is responsible for an incident in this case? Let's say they do a sloppy configuration and for some reason gets into HTTP and someone steals their credentials and starts loading off data. Who's the one in trouble? They. I would say the orange team in this case is the one in the most trouble, at least. Both of them are probably in trouble, but yeah.
Send something using HTTP over AIS.
Yeah. I'm just saying, the thing is, if we are so good at doing everything else, we should also make sure to actually do all the small parts. Because the small parts in the end actually matters a lot. And everything I wanted to do with this is just, as I said before, I want to just get off with some mindset things. And I want to make sure that we understand the responsibility here. Because we have been sold so many years from Microsoft that cloud is secure. And it is. But we, as developers, have a crucial part in building secure solutions. It's not something that just happens magically. Because if you screw up, right? And that's why we come into this and have this cloud misconfiguration as something that's actually happening. So, also from one of these reports, more than 90%, that's a lot, are actually worried about human errors in this case. And I understand that. And we see, if we look at everything, we see how the toolings and everything is helping us, pushing us in the right direction. But this is actually really important. And if we go, I was out looking for it. So there's a company in Spain who's doing systems for hotels. So they just did a small mistake. And so suddenly 10 million files got out. Someone was able to get 10 million files because somebody did a wrong click or a wrong parameter or something. They didn't expose that, but they did something. And I'm not saying this because I want to terrify you. I'm just saying this because it's possible. And it's good to understand, and good to understand how we prevent these kind of things. So this was done on an AVS, which means that I won't show you that because that's no fun on a Microsoft conference. But we could take the same kind of use case and just thinking about what we're doing on a normal storage account, which is the equivalent, if I'm not mistaken. And so a storage account, as you all might know, we can do a lot of things with it. We can store files, we can do messaging, tables, yada, yada, yada. And we usually use them for many cases. And if you go into a storage account, so I usually say that storage accounts is the most boring resource in Azure, but it's quite interesting actually, because it has a lot of flexibility. So it's actually quite fun from this kind of perspective. Nowadays, they're moving up the security part a lot from Microsoft, which I really enjoy. So nowadays you get this nice security part to the right. Let me zoom in. And you can see that we have secure transfer enabled, storage account key access is enabled, which means I accept static keys. Maybe not that good. But I got TLS 1.2, and I don't have any encryption for data. So blobs are stored in containers, and containers are something we can use. And in this case, if we want to store a lot of files, like 10 million files, we probably put them on blobs or similar media. The thing is with all of these is that they have an access level. And, whoa, sorry, let's go back. Here it is. So public access list, so private and container, which means, I know what it means, but it means that everything that is in the logs are private and everything that is in image is actually open. So if I go into images, like I just did, I can actually go in and collect this file and get the URL, and I can actually get it. There we go. Happy Easter from us. Apparently we are exposing images online. Okay. So this is something that could happen, and I mean, depending on our use case for the storage account, this is fine. I mean, is this the image I'm going to distribute? This is fine. But if I'm going to load files, 10 million files that is not supposed to get out, I could do some small tricks, and that's what we're going to look into now. So just by going to the configuration, and just by switching this small allow blob public access to disabled and save, I've actually removed the possibility of doing what I already just did. So with one simple switch, we can just prevent a lot of damage. Even if you're sloppy, because if I go back to my Easter egg right now, it's not available. So even if I did misconfigure it, I can lock it down. So these are the small things we can do to help ourselves to actually build solutions better. So if this storage account is not going to be used by anyone by us, why not? Why not lock it down completely? Okay. So storage account, leaks, yeah, not much fun. Could bring up a lot of these, but also there's even more of these reports that talk about cloud deployments, had some misconfigurations on everything. But in the end, I think we've heard this a few times today. There's something called network, right? This is good. So a lot of the things we hear when it comes to networking is like, you're not secure because you don't have network. I don't know, maybe. But there's also something with network as well, because it comes with something. It comes with cost. And it comes with restrictions. What are we developers really good at? Go around restrictions, right? We're creative people, right? So let's just take a small look at that, how this can be done. So now I'm back to the drawing again. So I'm going to bring in some things that we have seen and some things that actually has happened, which is interesting. So from a normal situation when you have networking and like an API management, you usually have an app gateway in the beginning. So I'm going to draw these subnets that we will need. So let's draw a few subnets. I don't remember how many I need, so let's draw one more just for the sake of it. So every box is a subnet. So I'll probably put an app gateway, and then I put an APIM, and I allow traffic in. So this is usually when the network guys are happy, security guys are happy, because we're done now. We got the firewall up and running, we do everything, right? But we're creative people, aren't we? So, first of all, we need to get to a key vault. Key vault's usually residenting outside, so we usually get to a key vault. So we start getting key vaults, doing this. Oh, not from gateway, sorry, not from app gateway. We're going from APIM. Let's put another color. So let's go there. So we're going over here. Everybody's good, right?
Why not put that in the network?
Exactly. That's a good question. Now you probably will have someone whining, let's put this in our networks. That's a good one. But this is actually how it usually looks like. It's usually being put like this. And that's kind of like, okay, we store our secret stuff there, but we put that outside of everything else. Okay, let's just leave it there. That's the case. What we could do is just actually use a private endpoint and connect that to one of these VNets and let they go from that instead. That's a good one. Okay, so now we got keys, we got API management, we got that part up. Let's say we need to get some data, because we love data, right? So we need to get some data from this particular VNet, subnet. So now cost comes into play, right? Because we like to build stuffs and restrictions and everything. We have an option here. We can go two ways. So for you who have been building network, you probably want to scream like 3 letters right now. No one. Okay, nice. Then I'll big that one. So either you can go an AIS and put it here. That's one option. Or you can build a function over something else and run it over here. And then do a VNet connection in here. So we can go and get our data. That's fun, right? So APIM going over here. Once again, we kind of lost it. And the funny part about this is, now we're going outside of VNet. We have a really tight thing over here. So we have a firewall. We may have like OAuth and a lot of other stuff in our API management. We have seen that today, right? A next installation of functions, in this case, would actually mean static keys. Because then you will have the function key. I just want to shout out on this, because this is not something that is uncommon. This is actually really common, that this is built. That you leave that function app. You can even leave that with possibility to call it with HTTP. And I mean, you have broken a trust in the whole chain. You did something really good in the beginning, and then you lost it on the way. This is quite common in many obvious reasons. It's easy, it's cheaper, it's a lot of other things. So, and that's good. And then you get someone in who actually thinks that, okay, we shouldn't do this. You can obviously lock this down with private endpoint. You can lock it down with OAuth. You can do a lot of stuff, obviously, and you should. Because if you're doing the whole shebang, you should really make sure to continue it all of the way, to keep the process all the way. Because in the end, as Nino said, an attacker can attack the weakest point. They're not going to take the front door if they're able to get in the back door. And if a developer is out debugging this in production and having the key, yeah, not something I would like. Another interesting case is when you use an AIS, you kind of end up in being painful to use functions for some reason. So we have seen a few people using web API instead. So they deploy the web API and going from APIM, going there, and then maybe to the database again. So this is nice. This is actually protected very well. Just one thing. Put up some sort of authorization in this, please. Because that is not coming out of the box in a web app, which means you need to implement something, or you need to use that authorization in your on the app service environment. App service, I mean. Please do that. Because there's a reason why we don't want people to get access to our data. Because in the end, network is really good for protection, but it's only good if you use it all the way, or if you also make sure to use protected in it. You're going to see a little bit later. We're going to continue this story. So, let's go ahead and get back to the whiteboard again. There we go, I hope. So, how many have heard of the breach that happened in Australia? The Optus breach. Obviously one guy. Exactly. So, good, then I can lie about what happened, right? That's okay. It's Martin who can judge me later. But the thing is, they got breached. They got, I don't even know how much data they lost, but they lost a lot of data, and it was personal data, and it was really dramatic. So the interesting part about this, I have no idea how their infrastructure is, but they could have had the infrastructure we had right now. They could have had that. because their breach was as simple as not having an authorization on an API endpoint. Sounds harsh, right? Something no one in this room would do, right? No one? Everyone? I said everyone's doing this. Everybody's doing this. So the thing is, this is also something that actually comes up once in a while. And I'm just going to show you one thing, because Microsoft has been a little bit better lately, but they have had an interesting opportunity, maybe is the good word for it. So this is an API management instance, and I'm going to go into APIs. And if you have been working with this, you might know that there's something called, on every API, there's something called like subscription required. Don't remove that for debugging purposes. Don't. That's actually happening. So let's say you have a chain of stuff going on and you start getting 401s. You start like, okay, I need to remove authorization along the way to understand where the issue is. And I get that. I do get that. But don't forget, if you ever do it, don't forget to switch it on again, because that's actually things we have found. But the more scary one, actually, is if you go into a product. So a product is a group of things. And let's go ahead and use this open. Then you have a new checkbox. Here, require subscription. Anyone knows what happens when I combine these two?
This takes precedence.
Exactly, this takes precedence. So, if I, for some reason, use this product with my API, it will actually be open. And just to showcase that, I have a small message here. So, access is denied due to missing subscription key. Let's just add it just for the sake of it, just have it now. Oh, something's tired, there we go. I don't have any message, it's just 200 OK, standing over here. Then I remove that part and I press send. Access denied. And if I go into this open, let's do it from the API part. Because I want to show what Microsoft has done. This is actually pretty recent, so I just want to show. If I would select this open, there's actually a text called open now. That hasn't been there for so long. It's actually quite new. And if I pick it, it's actually blue, and I get a warning sign. Remember that, because that's not good. And if I save this one, so this API is designed, the subscription is not required. And if I now do my request, it should go through. There we go, 200 OK. So that this is something to keep in mind when it comes to this, to make sure that we actually have this under control. Because this is actually a case I took it from. Those people were actually trying to do cores in a product, which is an interesting take. Don't do that. So as we said, the massive Optus breach is actually that there were no security on it. So that's kind of a thing. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's go for stolen, compromised credentials. I need to speed up, I see, that's good. So, compromising credentials. Like a new team member joining in. How do you handle? They're going to go ahead and build your functions. They need some settings, right? How do you do when you distribute those? Email? Teams? Is it checked into the source code? I don't know. There's a lot of ways. Just make sure to not use kind of persistent media or spread them out, because that's just dumb. So this is important to kind of bring with us, because credentials on the loose is not very good. So if you would accidentally check it in, it will end up in the history forever. If you would let Nino in on a computer somewhere and you have saved it somewhere, he will probably find it and will probably use it against you in some sort. And yeah, that's kind of the thing. And yeah, I was on another track, sorry. I got lost in my story. So anyone recognize this image? No one, cool. So this is an incident from 2 years back called Cosmos DB, or WizDB, where Microsoft actually had a bug in the Jupyter Notebook that let anyone collect any static keys from this one, from any Cosmos DB. So they could actually use that key, as he's doing now, directly to that Cosmos DB and take data. Static keys is a dangerous thing when you talk about credentials, about storing things. So remember all of this if you're doing it. Try to move to, we've been talking about it all day, like role-based access, managed identities, everything. Try to do that. And it also helps with that little small thing we talked about earlier, onboarding new developers. Because if we're using role-based access instead of keys, we cannot accidentally distribute keys wrong. In this case, if you just look at a host file, or a local host, with local settings it's called, sorry. And if you look at, am I able to kind of do, no, the big one up here. So this is a service bus connection, so we're going to do that. This is not so good to check in or not so good to share via email or something, because there's a static key who anyone can use, or when you leave the company. But if you would use managed entity, it would look like this instead. This is actually something you can share open. Because yes, they have access to the namespace, but they don't have the keys to get in, which is much better. So managed entity role-based access helps a lot. And ABAC is quite new, so role-based access you might be aware of, which is kind of giving access to anything in the subscription. But ABAC is quite a new thing, and it's basically been able to give access to certain files inside of blob storage, for instance. So we can make filters on that. So, store credentials. Anyone feel like that is saved stuff on a notepad, on your computer? There's one. Credentials, client ID, client secrets maybe. Well, usually they're quite okay. It's quite not that good, but as I said, when Nino comes in, things can change really quick. And that's actually what happened with Uber. So anyone familiar with the Uber attack, with the breach? And some nodding, some nodding. What actually happened was that they got social engineered. So they got hold of a VPN connection, getting in, using those Nino scripts, something similar at least, finding credentials. And I can bet they're good at a lot of things during security, and you are probably as well. So even if you use all of this role-based access, yada, 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 that wouldn't help Uber. Because what I did was using a PowerShell script on a machine with admin credentials. What happens when you do that? Storing credentials with admin properties. Yeah, you're fucked. And that's kind of how Uber got. So don't do that, please. And at the same time, like when they were done, there were kind of, I don't know if you saw LinkedIn, it was like 50 people they hired, all security guys or women. They were all security people they tried to hire. And this is also from the report that there's a big skills gap. We are missing a lot of security experts out there. I'm not saying this because you are security experts and you're going to have a good time because of that. I'm saying this because security is a team sport. It's something we do together. Even though we are not responsible for all the parts, we're responsible for what we are doing. If we are doing our part in a good way, it's going to be much easier for them as well. So they're going to be much happier. And that's kind of a big thing. So take care of your credentials. Don't do stupid stuff with them. Especially not storing them in files. We have proven that that's not good at all, actually. That's not very good. And use settings like RBAC, managed entities, etc. Make sure to have them use renewable credentials, so there's no static keys. And don't be fooled by security networking. You still have to do your job. It doesn't matter how good protection you have if you're not having any authentication when it comes in, because calls going to come in anyway. And inside as well. And to Gartner, they kind of took a good one on this, because we have seen stuff that is actually cloud providers who have been doing things wrong, and we have had leaks. But this is probably not going to be anything in the future. If you look at Gartner, it's only going to be us developers or us who works in the cloud is going to do something wrong. So it's really good to keep an eye on that. So I'm going to follow up a little bit on Nino's advice. I'm just going to send this with you. I'm not going to go too deep. But we need to take responsibility for what we're doing. So how many of you in here are actually I know exactly what security I'm going to deliver in my project? Still no one. They're not talking. You come in, they say hey, we want to have this security here, we're going to have this security here, we're going to have this one here. Still no one. No. And I get that, because we're not there yet. But we will probably go there. And as soon as we take that discussion up, it's going to be much more fun for us as well. Because it's much easier to build something in a good way, secure way, if we understand what they actually are requirements to do. And we set that together as a team or with the manager or whatever. When you've done that, get into the current status, and then start fixing things. And in the end, be persistent, because this is a long game. It's very easy to start off fresh, using all cool stuff that's out there, but it's hard to keep it over time. It's a long journey. Things happen along the way. And we are only humans. We will do errors. And there are tools out there to help you. There's a free one, Azure Advisory, obviously, out there. We got Azure Defender. We have been heard about it, and they're also growing on stuff. You can use things like infrastructure as code scanning tools. That is also appropriate. Or we have a service called Helium that we are using, or selling, I would say, rather, in this area. So, yeah. Good luck to you all, I would say. And thank you very much for today.